Thank you to all of our witnesses. Our panel has been extraordinary. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your strength to keep at this year in and year out and never giving up. For everything you have done and will continue to do on behalf of Holocaust survivors in the U.S., Israel, worldwide. This hearing is about the needs and the well-being of survivors and their families. Regretfully, nearly 70 years later, humanity continues to fail the victims of Hitler and the Nazis. We've heard your heartbreaking and remarkable stories. And again, I just want to say how truly inspiring each and every one of you is. As I said, my constituents continue to tell me about the failures of not just other governments, but sadly our own great, terrific government has let them down as well. My good friends David Mermelstein and his wife Irene, Joe Sachs and his wife Marcia, David Schechter, Alex Gross, Alex Moskowitz, Herb Karliner, so many others. They've repeatedly tell me that they feel let down by our efforts on behalf of survivors. So, Mr. Rubin and Ms. Firestone, I have two questions for you. What more can we do in Congress? What more can our U.S. government do to help alleviate some of these concerns? And also, what challenges and obstacles do survivors continue to face? And Dr. Paris, I'd like to ask you a question. You've dedicated most of your career to the care of Holocaust survivors and their families. You've detailed so many concerns that they have. What are the most common health issues that impact survivors? How can we help to ensure that they are getting the proper care and treatment that they need? And that first question for Mr. Rubin, Ms. Firestone, is also for you, Ms. Lieberman, is because the second generation of survivors. And Ms. Firestone, you work with heirs and families of survivors. I think a lot of the times we overlook the toll that is taken on the families, the children of survivors, the many issues that they face. How are the problems facing the second generation different from the survivors? And do we have programs currently out there that can address those issues? So a lot of questions, and we'll begin with you, Mr. Rubin.
Well, like I said before, Nazi Germany caused this problem that we are having today. And I think the German government should be responsible to see to it that those of us who are still alive, that we could live out our lives in dignity, not in misery. I myself am very fortunate. I worked very hard. Thank God I don't have to go on welfare. But a lot of people, a lot of Holocaust survivors, they don't have the same pleasant situation. And like I said, Congress could see to it that the German government see to it, like President Adenauer promised, that Germany will take care of the Holocaust survivors to their last breath. So I don't know, Germany does not honor their presidents, and that's a shame, because that was his request when he became president of a democratic Germany. And Germany could afford it. Not only Germany, but also the insurance companies, who robbed us, robbed our parents' policies, and they're sitting on billions of dollars. They are holding on to it, and they don't even want to see to it that they just help us a little bit. So we should have some finances to see to it that those Holocaust survivors who are in need should be getting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rubin. Ms. Firestone.
Thank you. I think that what people don't realize is the vastness of the Holocaust, the far-reaching effects of the Holocaust. The ripple effects go down not only to the second generation, but the third and sometimes the fourth generation. But the second generation is very, very unique among populations, especially for mental health. And if I might just point out a couple of things briefly. Number one, we are a generation, if you can imagine, totally cut off from our ancestry. The buck stopped here at the Holocaust. We stand in the same position, almost, as an adopted child who doesn't know where they came from. We begin at day one from after the Holocaust, and we have no extended families, had no extended families, or only fragments of extended families to raise us and support us, where others had grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins for whom they could rely on support, especially emotionally, because we had parents raising us who were children themselves when they went through the Holocaust and who had no training in parenting. So when they, in desperation, coupled up after the war, they now went on to raise children. With what tools? With what emotional tools? They didn't have them. So we, the second generation, really got the brunt of it emotionally, because our parents, up until the Holocaust, had the benefit of wonderful childhoods up until that dire time in history. So whatever can be done that brings funding for mental health for second generation, I'm begging you, it needs to be done. We have survivors who come to me because their children have been totally disabled and dysfunctional their entire lives, and now they're coming to the end of their lives, and they are frightened about what will happen to their children who can't provide for themselves financially. And this is a very real concern and a very big concern. It's not just one or two people. So again, whatever can be done. Certainly Germany needs to provide the adequate funding. It was they who caused the problem, and they need to accept that responsibility and provide adequate funds for it. But the claims conference needs to get up off the money and start giving it to the people for whom it was negotiated. And that's,
if I could interrupt, and I know we have two more witnesses to answer, about the claims conference, about iCheck. So often we hear that this was settled. Everything was taken care of. Everyone signed forms. All the claims were paid out. And in fact, very few claims were actually paid out. And one thing that iCheck was very successful in doing is denying you the right to go to court. What happens when a survivor puts in a claim in court and wants to have their day in court? What happens there?
well, now they don't put it into court. There was a remainder committee created in New York that ostensibly is supposed to deal with those claims. And yes, maybe a handful of claims have come through. My cousin was the first person to receive restitution from iCheck, because at the very magical occurrence, when he returned home after the war, he found the insurance policy of his parents. So he did have...
Which is very difficult for survivors and their family members to have.
It's impossible. The word is impossible. No one marched off to Auschwitz with anything, and no one got to Auschwitz and 5 minutes later had anything, and certainly not documents. So this was the rarest of occurrences that he would have found this document still in the family home. When his nephew went to claim, because the families had these insurance policies, he was told it had already been settled. He didn't even know that his uncle had claimed on the document. But why didn't they do due diligence? Why didn't they find out that there were other family members? Because they never put out adequate notices for us to know what was going on, for us to be able to come forward to do that. The same thing happened with the German properties in East Germany, that they gave a 2-year window What kind of 2-year window is that for the world to find out about something if you're not putting out adequate notices for us to even know that we can do this? But even when we tried, we get the door slammed in our face all the time. And iCheck paid out all of 3% of the monies and claimed that they did a great job. The claims conference claims the same thing. They negotiated all these billions of dollars over the years, and they're still holding on to all of it. Why wasn't it just given in the claims to the survivors when they claimed it?
The mechanisms were there, but it was never successful.
It was
and yet
never
because they
successful.
existed, they're able to say,
And-
see, we had this, everybody's fine.
And in addition, the claims conference, and I know this from people who came to me for help, very often they had the proof of the claims, and they suffered the atrocities and the indignities, but artificial roadblocks were placed in there by the claims conference claiming that Germany had done it. Well, I have a friend in Germany who's an attorney, and I asked him at one point to please look into a particular case. He came back and told me there was no such roadblock given by the Germans. It was the claims conference who did it.
Well, thank you very much, Dr.
Thank you.
Paris and Ms. Lieberman.
Thank you. Oftentimes, or when I'm dealing with a patient that comes into my office, I'm actually dealing with a dyad, a mother-daughter, a mother-son, or a whole family of multiple children, and the patient, as a geriatrician, is usually the older patient. But it doesn't really turn out that way because you really have to treat the whole family in order to treat the patient. And I think that brings up family therapy as a very significant unmet need in taking care of survivors and their offspring, because there's many roadblocks to the care of the patient because the children in their dysfunctional relationships with their parents often create roadblocks to the appropriate care on many levels. Very specific healthcare needs, I think, are well documented in the literature and you're familiar with. You've mentioned osteoporosis, the consequences which for my patients are severe compression fractures, severe pain, immobility, and severe degenerative joint disease, multiple replacements of joints because of severely worn out joints, terrible problems with teeth and dentures, which have tremendous effect on the whole well-being of the person in terms of malnutrition as a result of that, and even heart disease, endocarditis, because of infection from very poor gum care over many years. It's important to point out that it's not a medical and a psychiatric need. Somebody who has post-traumatic stress disorder, severe anxiety, depression, paranoid behavior, that affects their physical health too. So it's one sort of combined problem in these patients. It's frustrating for doctors, most of whom don't have the sensitivity or understanding of this, and they say, here's a pill, and it doesn't work, and the family member doesn't give it, and the patient doesn't want to take it because they're so paranoid of all medical care, that it becomes a very complex management team to even take care of what otherwise might be a very simple medical problem. I think it's very important to recognize that. And now many of the people that I'm taking care of are well into their 90s, and we're into a whole host of new medical care needs that have to do with end-of-life issues. And often patients and their children are unable to let go. They're unable to see suffering in their parents, but yet at the same time, my mother starved to death. You need to do everything to keep her alive right now. And often get inappropriate treatments or painful treatments because they just can't let go. And doctors are not trained in how to sensitively discuss end-of-life issues and goals of care with these patients.
Thank you, Dr. Paris. I'm just so way out of time. I want to get Ms. Lieberman a chance to answer. Thank you so much.
Okay, so as a child of a Holocaust survivor, I think Dr. Paris explained some of the challenges that we deal with. And then as a parent, and in this country, in this time, you want to bring up your children to be productive and happy members of society. My husband and I are both children of Holocaust survivors, and every day we face the challenge and exert great effort to make sure that the effects and horror of our parents' broken childhood and their survivorship ends with us. And I'm not sure we always do that successfully. In terms of your question, what would be appreciated, or what kind of programs would we like to see in the future? From my point of view, and I hope I'm representative of other survivors, would be grateful for any programs that would enable us to reach that goal that all of us as parents want, for our children not to suffer the consequences of us having parents who were Holocaust survivors and underwent the horrific situations that they went through. And then in terms of the I-check, I think the bottom line there is to have a legal remedy for citizens of the U.S. government to file in the courts and be able to move the insurance companies forward with opening their books and allowing us to see who actually had insurance policies and who didn't.
What a concept. Thank you so much. Thank you to all of our panelists. So pleased to yield to another fighter for Holocaust survivors, Mr. Deutsch, my colleague.